A challenge for modern organizations is employees using their own technology. That's bring your own device or bring your own services. And it can be very common today that an employee has some kind of a tablet or a phone where the employee uses this device to do some kind of work on behalf of the employer. But inevitably, if an employee is using a device, the employee is also using services, and therefore, as the employee is creating business records on this phone, those records could be copied up to the employee's own cloud account. From the point of view of the employer says, well, I hire you to do work for me, and you end up doing some of that work on your own device, and then it ends up in your service, your cloud service. I, the employer, I need that. I need control of that. I need to be able to get to that record, that information if you no longer work for me. And thus, there can be difficult challenges to figure out what is the best legal relationship between the employer and the employee. One approach is for the employer to have a BYO contract with the employee that makes clear that if the employee is creating business records that belong to the employer, that the employer can get access to those records or even access to a device if that is what is necessary to get control of business records. From the point of view of employees, if they stop and think about it a little bit, they might realize, you know what? I really do not want to have any business records at all on my own devices and my own services, because a risk for the employee is that the employer might get involved in some kind of a lawsuit, some kind of an investigation. And in the course of this lawsuit, a party on the other side may send a subpoena to the employee, demanding that the employee turn over all records that the employee has about working for the employer. Well, that can be a lot of trouble. If you've been doing a lot of text messages, for example, and you're talking about the workplace, you're talking about work that you do for your employer, you as the employee might need to spend a lot of time digging through records, finding records, looking into whether records have been copied up to this cloud provider, and so on. From the point of view of employees may decide, you know what, I don't want any records of any nature to be on my devices and my services, so that if I'm hit with a subpoena, I can say, I don't have anything, I'm done, I don't have to worry about that any further. In light of that style of thinking, some employers say, okay, I don't want to do a BYO contract with you because you're not going to use any of your own devices for work, but I, the employer, want you to have a phone and want you to be able to use that phone for business purposes, but I realize as the employer, it's a lot of trouble for you, employee, to carry around two different phones. So I'm going to own the phone. I, the employer, will own the phone. And this process is known as company-owned personal enabled, or COPE. And then the employer says, all right, employee, I'll give you a phone. I own the phone. I can always take the phone back. I can always get the records that are on the phone, but I'm going to enable you, employee, to use it for limited personal purposes, such as exchanging text messages and pictures with your family. That might work out fine for the employee, but the employee needs to have appropriate controls so that the employee doesn't use this device in some way that would embarrass the employer. So the employer would be motivated to have an agreement with the employee that says the employee will use this phone only within acceptable use practices. So acceptable use practices might include a requirement that the employee not use the phone, which is owned by the employer. The employee may not use the phone for pornography, dirty jokes, discrimination, bullying, and other illegal activities. I teach a 5-day course at the SANS Institute. The name of that course is Legal 523, the Law of Data Security and Investigations. You can learn more about that at sans.org. You can also learn more about me and my practice of law at benjaminwright.us. Here in this video, I've given some ideas that can help to address legal compliance or legal risk. Obviously, through this video, I'm not your lawyer, and if you need legal advice, you need to go hire a lawyer to give you specific legal advice. This video is only for public education.